us resume the marathon today of robot beasts from 1996 by looking at the tragic Maximal who saved the lives of all humanity. A score and 7 years before today, this theropod received his first release, but now we study his newest release to see if it indeed does him justice. Enter Kingdom Dinobot. As is typical of the character, Dinobot transforms into a dromaeosaur dinosaur based on the rogue dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, which were based off of Deinonychus anteropus but mislabeled as Velociraptor. With all that said, I'm just gonna call him a raptor from here on out because raptor on its own is a generic term that doesn't have a rigorous definition, and therefore nobody can tell me I'm wrong to use it. In Raptor mode, Dinobot is a rather strong departure from other Kingdom toys who favored real-world accuracy over cartoon accuracy. Mainly, he is completely lacking in the feathers that we now believe real raptors to have had, including both Velociraptor and Deinonychus. Instead, this figure leans heavily into the cartoon design, going for more of a reptilian appearance, even going so far as to have molded scales. And while I do really like the real-world accurate beast modes we've seen thus far, they definitely made the right call here. As interesting as it would be to see a feathery raptor transformer, it just wouldn't have been Beast Wars Dinobot. His reptilian design is iconic in its own right, and I think it deserves priority in this instance. And priority it was given. The colors are a little bit muted compared to the show model, but his stripe pattern is recreated very well across his torso, head, and hips. The neck, arms, and legs seem to have been skipped, but given the way those parts are engineered, I can kind of understand why. He's got it where it counts, and I think that's the most important part. It helps that the figure is so well sculpted. Pretty much every square millimeter of the raptor is covered in scale texture, even some of the exposed robot parts. And the most impressive thing is that this doesn't look like a repeated pattern. There's so much variation across his entire body that it looks like someone had to sculpt all of it by hand, or that they borrowed a texture from the Jurassic World team. Either way, someone clearly worked really hard to make a good-looking raptor, and I think they succeeded. The head really brings the whole thing together. It's such a characterful sculpt, with the thick brow ridges and the narrow, beady gaze. It really gets across the attitude of Dinobot very well, especially with the way the eyes are painted. Not only that, but the teeth are individually painted, and if you open the mouth, there's a fully molded and painted tongue. It's a Ghibli dinosaur mode, of course. Most of the raptor belly consists of very obvious robot legs, which can be a bit of a distraction, especially towards the back, where the feet are just hanging out there. And while we're looking at the back, I have to acknowledge the raptor eyes just stuck on the back of the hips. This is part of a transformation sheet we'll see later, and though it's only really visible from the back, I can't deny how silly it is. It just makes me laugh every time. For articulation, I already mentioned that the jaw can open and close, and the head can move up and down on the same pivot. The shoulders are universal, he has 90-degree elbows, and the wrists are on ball joints. Though sadly you can't straighten the hands out, meaning he's perpetually limp-wristed. The hips don't move unfortunately, but he does bend at the knee. The feet can pivot forward and back, rotate at the ankle, and the claws can open and close. Take all this together, and the raptor is surprisingly limited in terms of posability. The head and arms are very expressive, don't get me wrong, but without any hip joints, you really can't do anything with the legs, which is kind of important for a raptor. The raptor is 9 inches long nose to tail, which makes him about 50% longer than Cheetor's Cheetah mode. From what I can tell, this is pretty close to how they scaled in the animation. And surprisingly enough, this is actually real-world accurate scale too, if we assume the Dinobot is indeed supposed to be D. anteropus. It would put Cheetor a bit on the big side and Dinobot a bit on the small side, but it would all be within typical size ranges. In total, the Raptor mode probably could have been a bit better, but I think that it does a really good job bringing the cartoon design into the real world. Even the Masterpiece toy had some compromises after all, and I think for what you're paying, this is a really solid beast mode. You don't need to remove Dinobot's tail for conversion, but I think it's better if you do. After that, we get to what I consider the worst part of the process, bringing out the legs. You have to flex the plastic to get everything untabbed, and that always makes me a little uncomfortable, and it's even worse going back into Raptor mode. I do like how the shins open up to give space for the dinosaur legs, though. It's a neat bit of mass redistribution that you don't see very often in Transformers. Once you get the legs done, it's pretty smooth sailing. The entire Raptor body folds up on itself to form the robot torso, which gets a lot of the excess parts out of the way, leaving only the base of the tail as a backpack. And here is where we finally pay off the weirdness of the hip panels, as they unfold to widen out the chest plate, explaining the fake raptor eyes from earlier and why they couldn't rotate in beast mode. Fold the raptor arms up to fill out the extra space, and you're pretty much done. It should come as no surprise at this point that Kingdom Dinobot's robot mode is practically a dead ringer for his CGI model from the Beast Wars cartoon, with very few compromises for the sake of the dinosaur mode. Of course, due to the way the torso collapses together, you don't get the smooth blue back section he had in the animation, instead you get a few visible dinosaur parts. But even then, his backpack pretty much just amounts to the base of the tail, and if you open it up, you can see the spine and ribs molded in, which is a cute Easter egg. Aside from that, compromises are relatively minor, like scales on his thighs and feet, and one curled claw on each hand, which honestly I think should have been there from the start, since that's arguably the defining feature of a raptor. Of course, the head sculpt is where this figure truly shines. Once again, every detail from the animation model is recreated, right down to small ridges that are only visible in close-up shots. Even the back of the head has show-accurate detail molded in, albeit unpainted. But the thing I love about this sculpt is just how expressive it is. The grimace he has on his face is so in character for Dinobot, I can practically hear Scott McNeil growling in my ears. It's the perfect head design for this figure. I don't think I could ask for more. Once again, the paint deco is really the only place where I think they could have done a bit better. While the dinosaur mode was missing some of the striping from the animation model, it's almost completely absent from this mode. I can sort of see why they left it off of the arms, if for no other reason than the forearms seem unpaintable, but I think it would have been nice to see a little bit of it on the chest. I think the most glaring omission, though, would be the lack of gold on the shins. The molded bone details down there are just aching to be highlighted with paint, but instead they're just bare orange plastic. Maybe someday I'll go in with a paintbrush and fill those in myself, but even then, I don't know how easy it'll be to paint match the gold on his torso. While we're on the subject, I've also noticed that the paint on this figure seems to not be very durable. There looks to be a lot of little chips all over him, most notably in the knees. Again, it's nothing that the right kind of paint couldn't fix, but it's still very annoying that it's a problem in the first place. On to articulation. The neck is on a ball joint and has a lot of range of motion, even tilting side to side. The shoulders rotate a full 360 and move in and out on both sides of that swivel. Bicep swivels and 90-degree elbows, which can also bend backwards due to transformation in case you ever want that. The raptor feet form as hands, so they can swivel and bend in and out, and the claws can open and close. He has a waist swivel, though it's a little off-center due to the transformation, and it's also a little wobbly for some reason. Universal joints in the hips, really stiff thigh swivels, and 90-degree knees. His feet can tilt inwards and downwards, but they can't move upwards due to the shape of the parts. So, all in all, a very nicely posable robot. Just like his original toy, Dinobot's weapons form from the raptor's tail. The tail's exterior splits in half to become his spinning blade weapon, while the tailbone inside forms his sword. Because he has no proper fists, he instead holds these weapons using 5mm ports on the inside of his claw hands like the original toy. The sword even has a 5mm tab on the hilt so he can hold it properly. He looks really good holding them, though I question the decision to make the blade purple. The impression I always got from the animation was that the sword was a shiny silvery color, and only appeared to be different colors when reflecting the ambient lighting. But I guess the deco artist interpreted things differently, so we got a purple sword instead. The spinning tail blades are also missing the red paint inside, which at this point I'm not surprised by. The spinning gimmick itself is also absent. This is more disappointing, but also not surprising, since spring gimmicks never appear in Generations toys these days. Maybe a free spinning peg would have been nice, but I can see how part counts would have nixed that idea. I know some fans have made their own versions, though. The part that really bugs me though is the sword. The hole for it in the tail is 5mm in diameter, so you can attach other weapons using the combat system. That part is nice. The not nice part is that the sword's hilt is not a 5mm post. Instead, there's a ridge below the tab that, for the life of me, I can't figure out what purpose it serves. But because it's there, it can't be held normally by a figure with a 5mm fist hole. You can't even have Dinobot hold it toy style. It's unfortunate. I really wish that ridge wasn't there. As it is, these weapons are designed to look good in Dinobot's hands and nothing else. And at the very least, they succeed in that regard. Speaking of weapons, Dinobot actually has a few other bits of combat compatibility. There are 5mm ports on the sides of his knees and on the bottoms of his heel spurs. And if you really want to, you could put a blast effect on the hole in the back for his tail to store and pretend he has a jetpack. It's not a lot, but you do have options if you want to play around with some weaponizers or fossilizers. In robot mode, Dinobot stands just shy of 6.5 inches tall. This puts him 2 heads taller than Cheetor, which, once again, is damn near perfect scale between the two. Next to his former Predacon comrade Waspinator, he's almost twice as tall, which actually looks about right as well, which is interesting considering how small this Waspinator toy is. But I guess that just means that Kingdom has been pretty good about keeping these figures in scale, which I am not going to complain about. This is a phenomenal toy. I could nitpick things like the paint job or his weapons, but I just can't deny how awe-inspiring this toy is. The Raptor mode captures his cartoon beast mode almost perfectly, the robot mode is screen accurate with almost no kibble, and the transformation between the two is a master stroke of engineering. I cannot speak highly enough of this toy. If you are a fan of Beast Wars, particularly of the character of Dinobot, this figure is an absolute must-have. Exeunt.